One of the most common questions I get from clients, and honestly a question I used to struggle with myself before I pivoted into creative strategy, is this: what does scaling an ad account actually look like? We all know the main theory. If you're running paid ads, your goal is to scale your accounts, and in the worlds of performance marketing, that typically means increasing your ad budget while keeping your CPA, your cost per action, within an acceptable range. Whether it's leads or purchases, it's all about growing profitably. But there is a catch, and this is where it starts to get interesting. As your budgets go up, your CPAs go up as well, and that's a pretty well-known relationship. But why does it happen? And more importantly, what can we do about it? Over the last 10 years, I've worked with brands like Hulu, Universal Pictures, Sennheiser, and a bunch of scrappy startups managing over 100 million in ad spend. And through all of that, there's one thing I've seen over and over again. The best lever we have to scale profitably is creative strategy. In fact, I believe creative strategy is the single most future-proof skill anyone working in paid ads can develop. It's not just about media buying anymore. It's about storytelling, psychology, and understanding why people take action. So in this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll start with why the CPA versus budget relationship exists, why it's not your fault. Then we're going to get into the 3 dimensions of scaling your ad account with letting your CPA spiral out of control. If you ever looked at your ad performance and thought, how do I increase my budgets without tanking my return? You're in the right place. Let's get into it. All right. Before we dive into the dimensions, let's first wrap our heads around why CPAs tend to rise as budgets increase, because this relationship, it's at the heart of what makes scaling paid ads tricky. All right, here's the gist. Let's say your target CPA, which is the most you're willing to pay for a lead or sale, is $40. You're currently spending $1,000 a day and hitting a $30 CPA, so things are looking pretty good. But then you decide to scale. You bump up your spend to $2,000 a day, and suddenly your CPA creeps up to $40, which is your max allowable CPA. At this point, you can't really scale further unless you bring that CPA down. So what do? You optimize. You tweak your creative strategy, you refresh your ads, maybe you test some new hooks or offers, and let's say that works. That brings down your CPA to a $35. Great. You're now back under your $40 limit. Now you can scale again to increase to $3,000. Your CPA bumps up again, rises to $40. Then you rinse and repeat. Okay, so it's a cycle of you scale, your CPA increases, you optimize, your CPA decreases, you scale again. Right? So this is a very tidy example. In the real world, things are a lot messier. CPAs jump around based on the day, the platform, the audience fatigue, even random events you can't control. And the increases aren't always linear. Going from $2,000 to $3,000 might be fine, but $3,000 to $4,000 could blow things up. But still, this pattern is how I like to think about scaling at a high level. It's more of a media buying level. It gives us a mental model for understanding where we are and what to do next. So the big question becomes, why does this happen? Why does CPA tend to rise as you increase spend? Well, there's 2 big reasons, and the good news is that if you understand them, you can actually do something about them. Reason number 1, your creative is your targeting. So back in the day, media buyers used to obsess over targeting settings like age, interest, behaviors, lookalikes, CRM audiences. But with Meta's latest algorithm called Andromeda, that's all changed. So now targeting happens at the creative level. The algorithm looks at the content of your ad, which is the visuals, the copy, the script, and uses that to decide who to show it to. Let's say your ad says, "Attention dog moms with golden retriever puppies." At first, the algorithm will deliver it exactly to that audience, in theory. Dog moms with golden retriever puppies. It's laser targeted. It's probably going to convert really well. The creative is very specific to that small group of people. But as your spend increases, that super specific audience starts to dry up. So the algorithm decides to broaden. Maybe it expands first to dog moms with any kind of puppy, then to dog owners in general, and eventually to anyone who might vaguely be interested in dogs. As the audience gets broader, your messaging becomes less relevant. So a guy with maybe a 12-year-old Great Dane is going to see that ad and not click on it because it's an ad for golden retriever puppies. It's not relevant to him. So your performance drops and your CPA goes up. That's why scaling's tricky. The more people you try to reach, the less relevant your messaging becomes. That's the gist, unless your creative strategy evolves with it. So the key here is to make your creative specific enough to resonate, but broad enough to scale. It's not an easy balance, but it's totally doable once you know what to look for. The second reason is creative exhaustion, which essentially is your audience gets tired of seeing your ads. When people have seen your ads too many times, they start to ignore it. Even if it worked great at first, it stops pulling its weight over time. That's creative exhaustion. Here's why it happens. Maybe on the first few times, the person sees the same ad and it grabs their attention. But by the 5th or 6th time, it's now background noise. Engagement is going to tank, clicks are going to drop, The person's not interested in the ad anymore. The algorithm notices. It goes to your ads less reach, the CPMs increase, the cost to get someone to act, that goes up, your CPA goes up, and then you're spending more to get less, essentially. So scaling becomes really hard because your audience has essentially checked out. How can you spot this? Okay, there's 2 signs. One is that your CPA slowly rises over time and you're not refreshing your creative. Your ad frequency starts to climb, which means the same people are seeing the same ads over and over again. And this is particularly relevant to ads that are targeting existing customers or lower funnel audiences. If you're going after audiences that are in lesser awareness stages, you're going to go after bigger audiences. The pools are going to be bigger. Your ads typically have a longer runway, but lower awareness stage ads like short, offer focused ads, image ads, they tend to heavy up on lower funnel audiences, which means the runway is shorter and the ads exhaust faster. And if this concept of awareness stages is confusing right now, don't worry, we're going to unpack this shortly. But my main point here is that the fix to ad exhaustion is with creative diversity. So lots of ads with different angles and approaches. You need fresh angles, you need new visuals, new creators, different hooks. The more diverse, the better. And if your ads look the same but have slightly different copy, it won't be enough for your audiences to recognize the difference. So especially with the latest meta algorithm, bigger variations between ads is the move. Okay, so we've talked about the why behind CPAs, the messy relationship between spend and performance, and how creative plays a central role in all of it. We've explored that we have 2 problems. They're both 2 types of creative fatigues. We have targeting fatigue and creative fatigue. But the good news is that they're both solved by the same thing, which is smart creative strategy work. And that's exactly what we're going to get into next. Okay, so now we're moving into tactics. Here's how I think about scaling ad accounts in 2025. I call it box scaling. Imagine your creative output as a literal box. If we want to scale to grow performance, push more spend, and keep CPAs under control at the same time, we need to make that box bigger and heavier. And there's 3 dimensions we can expand. We have width, which is expanding the personas we're targeting. We have depth, expanding the awareness stages that we're targeting. And then we have weight, make better ads so that each ad has more impact. Okay, so just warning you that this stuff is a bit heavy. Feel free to take notes or go back and rewatch. It's a bit complicated at first. It took me a while to understand these concepts, but the unlock was one of the biggest ones of my career. Okay, let's start with width. When we talk about width in the context of creative strategy, we're essentially talking about going after a wider pool of personas. So let's say we're seeing creative fatigue where we can no longer scale against, dog moms with golden retriever puppies. One way to scale is to go after that dog owner with a 12-year-old Great Dane and make ad creative for it. So let's go wider and expand the persona segments we're building creative for. And when I say personas, I don't mean personas like this, the tech-savvy fashionista who's maybe a mom with 300K household income and spends 3 hours a week shopping on Instagram and loves Starbucks coffee. Old school personas used to look like this, so I like to just call this out because some people are still trapped in that way of thinking, but they're largely unhelpful in paid ads because there's so much detail in there. There's a lot that's irrelevant. It won't actually help drive our creative strategy. The better way of approaching personas is to break them down into 2 types of segments. We have problem desire segments and we have characteristic segments. These 2 segment approaches whittle down our targeting to the most important aspects in targeting audiences with creative. Let's start with problem desire segments. Every great product solves a problem. Often it solves many problems, and at the end of each problem is a desire, the outcome someone's looking for. So if we take Dr. Squash soap, for example, it doesn't just clean your body, it solves for multiple problems or pain points. Like, I smell bad. The desire of that would be, I want to smell amazing. Most soaps are expensive. I want great soap without overpaying. I don't trust soaps with chemicals. I want something natural. I don't feel attractive. I want to feel confident and desirable. Each of these problem desire pairings is a different segment that we can target. Your ads should generally focus on one core problem desire at a time, and resonating with a segment should be the focus of the hook in the beginning of your ad, and you should test for every core problem. Oftentimes, the best performing hooks are simply just stating the problem you're targeting as a yes question. So hooks like do you want great soap without overpaying, where we expect the audience to say yes, which makes it a yes question. That kind of framework has performed great for the brands that I've worked with. Some of these problem desire segments are going to be bigger than others and more pressing, and so you have to figure out what to focus on based on the results of your ads. So if performance is very good, even when you scale your spend to higher spend levels, you know you found a scalable problem desire segment to continue to invest in and optimize. Okay, now there's two types of problems. We have functional problems and aspirational problems. Functional problems are straightforward and easy to communicate with direct messaging, like our soap smells amazing and doesn't have harmful chemicals. These are easy to validate with product features. Aspirational problems require storytelling and emotional connection. This is where brand identity, imagery, lifestyle, storytelling, elements like that come in a bit more. Example would be the kind of man that smells amazing. The Dr. Squash example might be like, be the man that smells amazing, feels confident, attracts women, attracts the right people into his life. And for Dr. Squash again, their ads do this by positioning their soap as someone who makes you feel more rugged, primal, attractive. So rather than making you smell good, the products help you achieve or improve sexual companionships. Our strongest motivators are primal human desires. And there's a very famous book called Cashvertising that you should definitely read. And they refer to these as the Life Force 8. And here's a list. We have survival, enjoyment of life, life extension, enjoyment of food and beverages, freedom from fear, pain, and danger, sexual companionship, Dr. Squash, comfortable living conditions, to be superior, winning, keeping up with the Joneses, care and protection of loved ones, and social approval. These primal desires or other aspirational desires are very powerful as they tap into our evolutionary psychology. You know, what we care about as a species. Problems and desires should come from your customer research. So looking at your product reviews, your comments, your competitor reviews, their comments, etc. And how to conduct an actionable customer research is a whole different lesson. I'm going to cover that in a future video. Subscribe if you want to see that when I make it. But now let's switch gears. All right, we're still talking about width. Another way to widen your creative box is by speaking directly to audience characteristics. Things like age, gender, location, lifestyle, stage of life. I call these characteristic segments. The most effective hook in the world is, hey, your name, Brian McCready. This is targeted to a characteristic that's representative to you and only you, so it's highly relevant. There's a concept called the cocktail party effect. It's a psychological phenomenon that explains how our brain filters out background noise when we're focused in on a conversation. So imagine you're at a bustling cocktail party, locked into a discussion with someone. There's people talking in the background. The room is filled with that kind of chatter, but all the background conversations blend into an indistinct hum. You're not paying attention to it, so you can't make out the words. But if your name pops up in the background, even if you're locked into a conversation talking to someone, you're going to start to pay attention to the person who said your name. Your attention is going to instinctively shift. It pulls you away from your current conversation. Your brain's going to zero in on the sound. The ability to selectively tune into relevant information while ignoring distractions is essentially what I'm talking about. It's an example of how our perception works. And it's the reason why we're highly attuned to messaging that feels personally relevant to us. And this can be used to build more engaging hooks and messaging. Just like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the more specific it is, the better it is, the more it's going to resonate. But we have to balance that specific messaging with broadness so that our audience size is large enough for our campaigns to have room to scale. With characteristic segmentation, we're grouping our audience by age, gender, locations, situations, other characteristics like that in order to craft a specific but broad message based on our target audiences and characteristics. Okay, and here's the list of categories that you can use to segment your audience by. We have age, gender, location, education level, occupation, marital status, parental status, household size, ethnicity and culture, interests, political social views, personality traits, lifestyle choices, religious affiliations, buying behavior, product usage, life storage, urgency level. I'm sure there's a bunch more. An interesting thing about problem desire and character-based segments is that they can be stacked on top of each other. So let's say we have golden retriever dog moms. That's one characteristic segment. And then we have a pain point desire segment, which is trouble brushing their dog's teeth. We can stack them. So it's a golden retriever dog mom who has trouble brushing her dog's teeth. So this is speaking to characteristic and problem desire segments in one message. I generally like to stack ads by first targeting problem desire segments because every ad needs to solve a problem, right? That's the point of the product or service. Then I'll take that stacked approach and lay a characteristic segment on top of the winning problem desire segment. But I have worked with brands where certain characteristic segments are pretty crucial. They're almost a default because the product itself is only relevant to people of a certain characteristic. Like I've worked with prenatal supplement brands, which are only targeting pregnant women or people with family members who are pregnant or spouses. And that's an example of a product that's so inherently targeted that we have to use a characteristic segment from the get-go. It's also common with local advertising where the product is only relevant to people who live in a certain location. It's helpful to have messaging and callouts that's speaking to people in that specific location. So we've talked about width, and that's expanding your creative strategy by targeting a wide range of problems, desire, and audience segments, going broad with personas. And that's how we explore the edges of our market and find new pockets of opportunity. But now we're going to shift to the next dimension of box scaling, depth. Okay, so not everyone in your audience is at the same level of awareness, right? So some people don't even know they have a problem. Others are actively in market and comparing options. And then there's a smaller segment that's waiting for the right time to buy, right? They just need a nudge. So depth is essentially another way of segmenting your audience, but rather than expanding wide with different personas, we're now taking those personas that we're targeting and breaking them down by their level of awareness they have about the product or service. Okay, so going back to the dog example, if we're running into scaling issues with dog moms of golden retrievers, but we're only running lower awareness stage ads, these are people who are in market waiting to purchase for the right opportunity. A way to scale into other awareness stages with that golden retriever dog mom persona is to scale with depth. So essentially go up or down the awareness stage funnel. Okay, that's the gist. But let's get more into this by talking about awareness stages in more detail. Most awareness stages look like a funnel, and marketers tend to reference a funnel that looks something like this, where we have awareness and then consideration and then purchase at the bottom. And it's a good overall model, but it's not that helpful for creative strategy. A more helpful funnel for making Facebook ads look like this. So we have symptom aware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and offer aware. These are more actionable because they help dictate the kind of messaging we need to move people throughout the different awareness stages, because that's the goal of our ads, is moving them, changing their behavior, moving them through the awareness stages, and then hopefully getting them to purchase or take action. A person needs to be aware of their symptoms to become aware of the problems, and they need to understand their problems before learning about the solutions, and they need to understand the solutions before they'll consider specific products. And they'll need to understand everything before they'll respond to an offer. So let's say our problem is I smell bad. If we break this messaging down by awareness stage, it might look like this. A symptom ad might start with a hook, do girls not want to talk to you? And then the ad would explore the symptoms and connect that to the problem you're solving for, which is smelling bad. And then it's going to introduce your product as a solution, dive into products, features, and benefits, and end with an offer, right? That's a pretty common structure. A problem ad, so going down one notch in the awareness stage funnel, might start with, do you smell like a porta potty? Okay, that's the hook, and we're skipping the symptom and going straight into the problem. A solution ad might start with, bar soap attacks odor at the source. And then a notch down, a product ad might start with, most bar soaps have harmful chemicals, but not us. And then an offer ad will jump straight to the offer. Something like, our top rated scent is now half off. If a person is already aware of the symptoms, problems, and solutions, then the theory is all they need to be sold on now is the product features, benefits, and the offer. The person doesn't need to hear a story about symptoms, problems, and solutions because they're already aware of all that. They're at the product stage, and then they need a product ad. One note here is that the stages are in order from largest to smallest in terms of audience size. So symptom aware has the most people, offer aware has the smallest people. It's a funnel. But with this in mind, offer ads at the bottom convert at the highest rates because they've had the most education, they have the highest level of awareness, we're resonating with people who have a high intent to purchase, but they're also exhausted the quickest because the audience size is the smallest. And then the next smallest would be product aware, where there's a bit more people in it, but they require a bit more awareness and more education. They need to understand the benefits and features first. So it's a bit of a trade-off in that the smallest pockets perform the best, but exhaust the quickest, and then vice versa on the upper end of the spectrum with symptom ads. And this is important to note because it essentially means that you're going to get good return on ad spend from offer ads and lower funnel awareness stages. And this is good to keep in mind because it means that you're going to get the most return from lower level awareness stages, but they're also going to exhaust more quickly. I consider these lowest hanging fruit audiences, but your account isn't going to be able to scale if you just heavy up and completely exhaust these lower stages. You'll need to eventually run higher stage ads as you begin to scale your budgets. And a good play to run here is to start making ads for offer aware and product aware stages. See what's performing well. Eventually you'll see exhaustion and you need to scale by moving up into other awareness stages. Then take the learnings from the offer ads and product ads and apply them to higher level awareness stages. And the overall playbook here is to test a lot and match awareness stages with personas to see what pockets are performing the best at scale. Okay, another checkpoint. So we've talked about expanding your strategy wide, so we're reaching new problem desire segments and new characteristic segments. And we talked about depth, where we're taking these segments and making ads for different awareness stages inside each of these segments. All right, this stuff can get pretty heady and confusing. Here's another way to think about it. So let's imagine we're in a perfect world. We have two lofty goals that we aim for with width and depth. These are, I call them North Stars. They're unreachable and they can't be achieved at all in reality, but conceptually they explain what we're aiming to do when it comes to segmenting with our ad creative strategy. These North Star goals are full segment coverage and full funnel coverage. Full segment coverage means that we have ads for every possible audience segment. So characteristics, problems, desires, stack combinations, and for full funnel coverage, that means each of these segments has ads for every awareness stage. So there's symptom ads, problem ads, solution ads, product ads, offer ads. We're covering the whole spectrum of awareness levels across every single persona imaginable. All right, that's the North Star, but because there's limits, we need to incorporate strategy. Strategy is another word for prioritization. So through testing and learning, we need to discover what awareness stages, characteristics, problems, and desires, and stack combinations are driving the best performance at scale. And you might find some problem desire segments that are so large and attractive that they deliver good performance with full funnel coverage from symptom to offer ad. Or you might find that your problem desire segment only delivers below our allowable CPA when paired with product ads and offer ad. And maybe you find a specific characteristic segment that's only performing well when paired with a specific offer ad. This isn't dogmatic. There's no exact do this manual. It varies by your category, your brand, where you're at, your market sophistication. But what we're covering here is essentially foundational building blocks and concepts that should kick off your approach to testing. Your strategy should emerge through testing and learning. And your strategy is going to be specific to variables like your brand, customers, you, the platform you're running ads on, stuff like that. Okay, so we've explored width, we've explored depth. Now we're on to the final dimension of the box method, and that's weight. And this section is not going to be as long because it's a pretty simple concept to grasp. Weight is just about making your ads better. It's going to be through testing and learning and iteration. It's the process of refining your creative, making it punchier, clearer, more engaging, and stacking up learnings and wins that compound into big performance gains that you can apply to your entire ad creative strategy. The best thing you can do here is double down on what's already working, and that should be one of your golden rules as a performance marketer. Do more of what's working. So you take your best performing creative, and instead of making little micro tweaks like changing the background color, changing a few words, you go a bit bigger with your swings. You'll play with creative diversity, so testing new formats, new storytellings, angles, new hooks. Experiment with pacing, contrast, humor, tension. You got to learn what's already getting attention on your platforms and then align your creative accordingly. Here's some things to consider to generally just make your ads better performing. We have balancing education with entertainment, invoking curiosity, showing before and after transformations, building trust through authority, showing extreme authenticity, which means real people, real stories, imperfection, messiness, ugly ads, introducing new mechanisms, which means new ways of showing how your product works, delivering value, introducing it as a new solution in the market, and then tapping into psychology concepts. And then, of course, making lots and lots of ads, going for volume. This is massively important because the new algorithm Andromeda favors volume, variety. You get rewarded for this. And also, the more reps you put in, the more at-bats you take with your creative, the faster you're going to learn. So the better your ads are, the lower your CPAs will be, and that's going to give you more room to spend budget. The scope of making better ads is massive, of course, way bigger than this video has room for, And really, it's going to be a collection of every concept that exists within creative strategy, because the purpose of the creative strategy position is to make better ads and a smarter creative strategy that improves performance. So I can't cover it here, but this big topic is the focus of the videos I'm going to be making moving forward: how to make better ads, how to make a smarter creative strategy that improves your performance, which is the lever more so than anything else that improves paid ads performance as a whole. So subscribe if you want to see those videos as I make them. Anyways, that's the box method. That's the 2025 way of scaling your budgets via creative, with width, expanding into new personas, depth, expanding throughout the awareness stages, and weight, which is making every creative better. Combine these together to work past the CPA ceilings that you're going to hit, and scale your budgets with a strategy that adapts, evolves, and compounds over time.